Welcome to the PIO podcast. I am your host, Robert Tornabene. I have been a PIO for over 11 years with 27 years of law enforcement background. Welcome to season 2 of the PIO podcast. I am working hard to bring you the very most diverse crowd of subject matter experts in the public sector field. You can help grow the podcast by sharing it with friends and colleagues. Please give the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you listen to. So sit back and enjoy our next episode. Good morning. Today on the PIO podcast, we have Pete Piringer. He's from the Montgomery County Fire and Rescue. Pete, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here. Love talking about PIO stuff.
You are a trainer as well as just a public information officer. So we're going to get into all that. And you have a really good friend, Mark Brady, who you co-teach with, if I'm not mistaken, who suggested I get you on. And you've been in the background. You're one of those people I do want to get on. So I'm glad I finally got you. So let's talk.
Mark and I go way back. We go way back.
Yeah, and we did talk about that earlier about some compromising photos, but we'll leave that alone for now. Let's talk about your career and how you became a spokesperson for the fire department.
Well, it was, of course, this goes back decades, really. Before there was people knew how to spell PIO, really. And I worked in Prince George's County. We had a very progressive fire chief at the time. He was very media friendly. And again, this was in the 70s and 80s for the most part. And Chief Jim Estep, and he was very, like I said, pro-media. So we did have a civilian public information officer at the time. I happened to be working at communications and the 911 center basically, and got involved in some special projects, the newsletter and things like that. Then I became an assistant PIO. I started helping out Chief Estep and his staff there doing some stuff. Eventually, in the 70s, became the PIO. Again, Prince George's County was one that was very proactive. We had a dedicated person, decades ago, a dedicated PIO, almost unheard of. The media was a lot different too. You had what I call traditional media, but broadcast media, radio. We had some round-the-clock news stations at the time. TV, I think the morning news might have been like 7 a.m. to 7:15. They had no noontime, middle of the day news that pretty much started at 6 o'clock, 6 and 11. And that was pretty much it. And of course, we had newspapers, which had certain deadlines. So the media was a lot different. But that evolved into eventually I would become the PIO in the 70s. And, I worked at that for a number of years, and just kind of, there was no real book on PIO at the time, and learned by, trial and error for the most part. I had worked with a lot of great people, Mark Brady being one of them, brought on board. I had a lot of great assistant PIOs and chief officers over the years that, we did pretty good, in the Washington metro area, which is a very unique media market.
Okay, you've had a really broad spectrum of activities. Your agency's handled some high profile cases. What is one case that sticks in your mind from the PIO standpoint?
Well, and also let me give you, I don't know if you were going to get into it or not, but, I've had a pretty good career and I've worked a couple different places. So I spent most of my life, nobody really associates me with Prince George's County anymore because that was a long time ago. But I was there, 23 years, 24 years. Then I had an opportunity to go to the Maryland State Police. Now, Maryland State Police at the time, it was the superintendent of the state police, Dave Mitchell, had been the police chief in Prince George's County throughout my career. The governor of the state of Maryland, Paris Glendenning, had been the county executive of Prince George's County. So Chief Mitchell had asked me to come to the state police. He wanted to focus some media attention on the Washington metropolitan area, which is, the state of Maryland was pretty much, state police was Baltimore centric at the time. So he wanted me to work on some of that. So I had an opportunity to be part of the Maryland State Police for a couple of years. Then at that conclusion of that career, there was new governor and kind of a shift there. But I had an opportunity in 1997, 1998 to go with firehouse.com, which, back in the 90s, .com and all that was just kind of coming
Just
to
coming out,
fruition.
right?
So, I worked with them full time for only briefly, and then I had an opportunity to come to Montgomery County. Of course, I stayed in connected with Firehouse for a while after that. I should say also I was a traffic reporter for Metro Traffic in the 80s. And while I, had other jobs, while I was working for Prince George's County for the most part, I was a traffic reporter in the Washington metro area. So that kind of connected me to the media there as well. Then I was able to come to Montgomery County in 2001. And then shortly after, of course, we had 9/11 and, what would follow from that. I was here for 8 years. I had an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. Fire Department. Chief Dennis Rubin had been trying to get me to come down there for a couple of years. He and I go way back, and had an opportunity to go there. And that was a great experience. Wife and I moved downtown DC for a couple of years. There was a change of administrations there. I survived that for a short while. I was able to work in the office of the mayor's communication to the Secretary of State for the most part. And that was just a great experience living downtown, working downtown for a couple of years. Then I left there and went to a municipality, City of Laurel, which is midway between Baltimore and Washington. I had been friends with the mayor, longtime mayor there, Craig Moe. He's still there. He's involved with the fire service, but he and I go way back. And he wanted me to come in and start this Department of Communications, basically. They had a local cable television station that he wanted, the city to kind of take over. So I was able to come in there and do that. I figured I was going to retire there. It was a great job. I love the community and love working with the mayor. And then Chief Steve Lohr in Montgomery County called me up one day and kind of brought me back into the fold. And so I've been here since, 2014, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
So that being said, so I've probably forgotten about more incidents than I, can remember, but, plane crashes, building explosions, train crash, just all big stuff. I pretty much had an opportunity to deal with some things. So obviously 9/11, 2001 was a big one. The Pentagon, we responded to the Pentagon. I did have an opportunity to go to New York also, but there's been a number of incidents. I don't know. Did I answer? What was the question?
No, you covered it. But one of the cases I want to talk about is I saw in your background you were involved in the DC sniper case.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So that was in 2002. I just come back. I was with the state police for a couple of years, and then I had just been back less than a year. It was shortly after 9/11. And October of 2002, in fact, 31 days in October to be exact. And we had the sniper in the Washington metropolitan area was basically terrorizing the area. A number of people were shot and killed, many of them in Montgomery County, but throughout the region. And I was able to, on a very high level at that time, I was very involved and connected with the county, Montgomery County's public information officer, the director of communications, Dave Weaver, and county executive, Doug Duncan. I did a lot of work with them as a fire department PIO. So many cases I was able to staff the county executive as they were we were part of a regular briefing by Chief Moose, who was the chief of police at the time. And that was pretty tense situation. I'll tell you one story. Is like one day first of all, the day it happened was a nice day. We had the first shooting was a young man cutting grass, and they heard an explosion. The man was down, traumatic injury, transported to the hospital. As that was going on, there was another shooting. Shootings at that time were pretty rare in Montgomery County, but as the ambulance was going to the hospital, they said, at first they thought it was shrapnel from the lawnmower, and hit a can or something, and the medics determined that it was a gunshot wound. And so I called communication. I said, what's the background here? How'd you get the call? And they said, well, we thought it was a transformer. Somebody said sounded like a gunshot. Well, it turned out to be one.
Right.
Then just one incident after another, very unusual. As I said, we had some shootings, and the media. We sent units back. Eventually, closed our stations. Sent everybody home. Chief Moose was having these news conferences. They were growing in popularity, and it was just being on the ground floor of that. But fast forward to a day or two later, Chief Moose was having regular news briefings at the police headquarters. And this particular day, I was staffing the county executive, Doug Duncan. And, we're standing up there and I with the county executive, and I'm looking down the road to my right and to my left, and every single person has a bulletproof vest on except for the fire department guy, right? Guess I didn't get the memo. So anyway, but, that was something that, and of course, as I said, I had just worked for the state police for a couple of years, so had some really good contacts there, and they were very involved in the case. And in fact, they brought the guy down, a couple of weeks later, not far from Montgomery County in another jurisdiction. But
Right.
So that was a big media frenzy. Now, and also, this was really before social media was, really prevalent, and there was a lot of not necessarily, well, there were some leaks, some information getting out, and it was difficult for leadership to deal with that in some cases. But it was very interesting, and kind of parallel to that, a year or two later, I guess it was 2003, we had this serial arsonist in the metropolitan area, prolific arsonist, and for a couple of years. He was setting some fires, and I think it was 2005 he was arrested. So that was another big case, I had the opportunity to get involved with, on the ground floor. But there are so many that just come to mind. But
I just had a thought, Pete. Here's a question about if the DC sniper case had happened in say the last 5 years with social media, how do you think that would have played out?
Man, first of all, a lot of the training I'm able to do and classes I'm involved with in networking and all that, being a fire service guy, we like to tell war stories and all that. But, as I tried, we used to talk about, Mark and I, in fact, used to talk about how we, our jobs and positions, evolved, from fax machines to what nobody, PIOs and journalists today, they don't care about that. They don't really necessarily care because, you talk about social media, and I often wonder about that sniper case in particular. Had social media been around, it probably would have been totally different. Think about how, there was some information like, in fact, the vehicle was ID'd at a shooting in DC, but they just didn't connect the dots. There was so much information, but the information was kind of through the mass media, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, investigators were doing their thing. But, so I think the fact that, they had like I said, they had the car identified, or that was part of the information, but they didn't figure that out for quite a while. I think social media would have forced investigators and all of us to kind of, deal with the information more real time. And, it would have been, a blessing and a curse. In some degree that, you have to deal with the information. I was just talking to one of my investigators here today that, and they're tuned into it, but, none of us are surprised that, information gets out these days.
Right.
You just have to, in fact, you should expect it and just have to, have ways to deal with it, but don't be surprised and don't be taken back. Don't get pissed off. Somebody's going to find out about it. So just deal with it.
Exactly. All right. So let's switch gears, Pete. Let's talk about your experience as a trainer for FEMA, as an instructor in Emmitsburg at the National Emergency Training Center. Let's talk about that. How did you get involved in that? And what has been the most rewarding thing that you've received out of that as being a FEMA trainer?
Well, we're blessed here in Montgomery County and Maryland, the National Fire Academy and Emergency Management Institute at the National Emergency Training Center is located in Emmitsburg, Maryland, which is not too far from where I'm sitting right now. So it was one of our PG connections. Prince George's County retired chief was a program manager of emergency management at the time, and he was overseeing the special programs for emergency management teams and special hazards position, and they needed some PIO instructors. So, I was able to get in, and back in those days, they might have one or two of those classes a year, pretty much at the Fire Academy and then in Emmitsburg, and occasionally, around the country, but, one or two. And that kind of evolved, and, there was changes of administration and the curriculum changed a little bit. And, so I was able to, kind of go along with the programs. And I'm not necessarily involved in all the PIO type programs, but I am with the master's program, the advanced program, and of course now the Emergency Management Basic Academy, the L105, which is the former, basic PIO class. Is
Okay.
part of the,
and that was going to be my next question. What are you teaching? And you threw that one out there. That's awesome. Yeah. So where do you see PIO training in the field going in the next 10 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we've, it's been a little bit of a struggle. We've dealt with some curriculum changes, and, it takes a little while to make sure that they're all, compliant, and that sort of thing, and to make that change. So, in fact, they just rolled out the new, as we speak, in Kentucky, they're doing the first rollout of the advanced PIO class with the new curriculum. So pretty excited about that. But, I just, with social media and traditional media everybody knows the traditional media now is social media, a lot of different platforms, a lot of the people that, networking with now, the media's changed so much. That used to be my primary audience, but now, the social media, again, this is, there's pros and cons, but we can deal with so much in a short period of time, but also that's, can cause some problems, some issues too. But I think the people that we're networking with, we're training, are different. At least in my experience have been, they're like emergency managers. They're recovering journalists, former journalists.
Yeah.
There's and then of course, the police and fire, public safety people that are coming up. Sometimes they're, it used to be they were normally given that assignment because they're being punished. But
which has seemed so counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we all know that nowadays. And of course, with the media, there are no news cycles anymore, the news cycle is 24/7,
right?
Where there used to be, news cycles where you could actually, take a breath and that sort of thing. But, that's, I don't know, it's just kind of, I think the focus in the next 10 years is more on crisis management and how technology is going to, fit in all of that.
Right.
It's just unbelievable that how much technology is changing and aiding, all these tools that we have at our disposal now. What we're doing right now is, kind of cool. So
it is,
yep. I think it's more, it's going to be that crisis management, more of a focus on that probably.
What do you see as a challenge facing PIOs and getting information out to the media?
Yeah, I think it's just the news cycles, it's just dealing with that, knowing what the expectations of your community are, know what the news media needs, wants, and, try to give it to them. So, it's all kind of goes hand in hand. I advocate, I've got, I'm in my office now and I've got a couple of posters or signs or reminders, and I'm like, what do you know? Who needs to know it? Have you told them yet? You can internalize that, like, how I told the chief, this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
But, if you look at it broader, It's more, you can, define it however, whatever fits for you. We talk about the strategic communications wheel, the planning P and all that kind of stuff in our training classes. And, there's different steps of that process. In fact, I got a poster up on the wall here, but to me, the most important step is the audience, and knowing your demographics and who you're talking to and what, who needs to hear your message. So, what do you know? Who needs to know it? Have you told them yet? And then if you parlay that into, get it first, get it right, get it out. That's also has many different levels and, perspectives on that. But, certainly advocate that, and that goes into some other things about controlling the narrative and being the source of information and, being the trustworthy voice of your community as far as, public safety or whatever messages you're delivering. So,
So it's good. Some really good observations, Pete, and some interesting, views on where we're going to go. And I think you're right. I think we definitely are going to see more of a crisis comms approach. And I think you're going to see that technology is really going to, I think finally we're realizing that we have to have our own technology platform. And there are some out there right now. Christine Townsend's doing some phenomenal work right now with her PIO toolkit. And that software is going to be, I think in the long run, we're going to see more of that, making it easier for us to do our job, but also to control the content so that we can remove that content when it needs to go.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I went kicking and streaming to, when we started doing emails, it's like, I was more of a, personal, management by wandering around type of guy.
Right.
So, and I still, it's in our world, relationships are so important. And, as a public information officer, relationships with the media, just so invaluable. But, now we, our audiences are broader.
Right.
And, it's our community, our elected officials, internally, our, co-workers. And I didn't mention how important the family is in all this. I have 3 grown daughters, I have grandchildren now. But through all this, the evolution of my career as a PIOs, wherever I worked, of course, my kids eventually, and wife, they're very supportive of it. And I think that has a lot to do why, I've been successful over the years, is just, it's so important, to have that family, being part of all this.
Absolutely.
With me for a number of years. So, that's key. But, and if your family is, your work family, that's part of it too. It's very important, but, love my kids, love the grandkids, and they, they've, give them credit for largely to my success in this world.
I'm glad you brought that up about your family, because I think that's something that gets overlooked a lot of times, is if you don't have that support, and especially when you have to leave family events or you have to take a phone call and step away from what might be a semi-important family moment, sometimes they can look at it, that can hurt a relationship. And the fact that you can point out that they've gotten supportive and they've supported you these years, I think that's important for any PIO to realize they have to have a strong family relationship to survive.
Yeah. And, I've missed my share of, birthday parties and dinners and all that kind of stuff. But, I'd like to think, I've made it up to them in some way. But a large part is due to my bosses. I've always had a large amount of flexibility in my scheduling, and I'm available 24/7. I'll come out in the middle of the night. But, I traditionally haven't had to come into the office right at 9 o'clock and punch in, So that's all worked out. But I guess over the years, if you figure out my average hourly wage, it's pretty pitiful, but I am well compensated, and a large value is, that flexible schedule and support of, the family, but also the support of my leadership has been, I've been blessed in that way. I mentioned Chief Estep and Chief Mitchell, but Tom Carr here in Montgomery County, Gordon Iowagi, who was the fire director who hired me here, brought me here. So and Doug Duncan and Dave Weaver, who went on to the Obama administration. He worked at NASA for a while. He's a Montgomery County resident. So I've always had those good people and great mentors. So.
Oh, that's good. That's good to have. Definitely good. All right, let's lighten this up and go to some rapid fire questions, Pete. Favorite sports team?
Well, my kids, my three daughters have been very athletic. I'm just, I just enjoy sports. I don't have a favorite. You kind of local teams but since I've had some jobs, I've had an opportunity to be involved in professional sports at various locations. For example, when I worked in DC, I pretty much went to every Nationals baseball game.
Okay.
United soccer games and so forth. And, I just enjoy that. So it's nice if you can, get in in the first place and work, call it work sometimes. But, so that, of course, we have Baltimore, so I like the Baltimore teams. Of course, I kind of got that bug when I worked for the state. But I'm more so interested in youth sports. I coach my daughters in a number of sports, and I just enjoy, women's basketball in particular. Having three daughters, so that's fun to watch. So I really don't have a favorite. I'm just like, and people always ask me, where did I like working the best? Well, it's always the one I'm in now, always the job I'm currently at. So same type of thing. I just enjoy sports in general.
Excellent. All right, chocolate or vanilla?
You talking about ice cream?
It could be ice cream, could be whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a vanilla type of guy. So, I would say chocolate, but I do like, my wife and family and I get a chance to travel to Greece quite often. Frappe drinks are my favorite, favorite drink. And with a scoop of vanilla ice cream in it, it's like really primo. So, I have to say vanilla in that case, in a Greek frappe coffee drink, that'd be
okay. Excellent. Do you have a must-read book in your mind?
Well, there's PIO books, fire department books. I would say, personally, I would think maybe it's a children's book. Some think it's a children's book, but Shel Silverstein, The Giving Tree. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
I have. Yeah.
Shel Silverstein is an author. I actually met him in Key West one time in a restaurant, and had a great visit with him. But back in the 80s. But it's a book about my kids enjoyed it, and I think there's some life lessons to be there. But it's about friendship and relationships and things like that is one way of looking at it. So that's and it's a quick read. And he's got some other books, The Sidewalk Ends Here, which is a collection of poems and things like that. But I like, if we're talking about PIO stuff, Gerald Barron wrote a book a couple of years ago, and he's used to be based here in Washington, DC, at a PR firm, or I forget where he was at the time, but he's out on the West Coast now. But he wrote a couple of books, but Now It's Too Late too.
Okay.
That's a quick read. It's kind of about social media and nano news and the speed of news and that type of thing. And it's just kind of interesting. I'd say that's 4 or 5 years old though. So and he'd probably tell you it's
it's too late.
Something else. But yeah, exactly. But then fire service stuff. Of course, I worked with Chief Dennis Rubin. He had a book. Decades ago. Rube's Rules for Survival. It's just kind of a leadership thing. Case studies, I think, is interesting. And then of course, Billy Goldfeder, which is he's a chief, a fire chief, and he's written a book. It's actually might be on the 4th version of it, but Pass It On. And it's just a number of fire service leaders, public safety leaders, passing on their wisdom and
Right.
he's put that in the book. So Pass It On is a good book. But you know, Giving Tree is you know, and there's a couple other leadership.
It's a good book. I've read that book. Yes,
Yeah.
I've read that. So if you could have coffee with a historic figure, alive or dead, who would you choose?
I would probably choose my wife. You know,
Okay.
I know that's probably a cop out, but
no, that's perfect.
you know, she's my you know, president of the company and CEO and you know, finance officer and all that. But you know, she really does support me in so many ways. But you know, I don't know. There's
No, that's perfect, Pete. You don't have to add any more.
But
That's
yeah,
perfect.
that have to be that's my answer.
And what would be your superpower if you could get one?
Superpower. I mean, hey, you know, I've got some grandkids, some boys, you know, they're all in all that stuff. And sometimes you know, they'll be doing something. So there's all kinds of amazing superpowers that would be kind of cool. You know, I thought about maybe reading minds, but then I gave it a second thought, said, maybe I don't want to know what people are thinking. I mean, we intuitively read people's minds anyway.
Right.
I would say maybe a circadian manipulation. How about
that? Okay.
And that's kind of like, you know, slow things down a little bit. Maybe, you know, if you want to get all scientific about it, you know, climate change, maybe, but, you know, endless summer, you know, whatever.
There you go.
Whatever.
All right, Pete. So final thoughts, anything you'd like to add?
Well, you know, I guess, you know, I'm sure Mark or any PIO that's been through our training, which are, you know, hundreds, thousands now, you know, we advocate that, you know, PIOs certainly, you know, get the right information to the right people at the right time so they make the right decisions.
Yep.
And, yeah, that's great. It works in the PIO world, certainly, you know, that's what we're trying to do. But think of it as our personal, you know, agenda as well. Communication is so important. You know, I think, you know, going back to your question of where, you know, if we think that a notification, a tweet is communication, you know, it's not. You know, it's, you know, communicate. If you look it up in the dictionary, it's, you know, transferring one thought from one person to another. So, you know, we have to be able to communicate. So, you know, if you're getting the right information to the right people at the right time, even if it's like your family, hey, what we're going to do for dinner tonight, you know, kind of discuss it, and communicate. You know, so just keep communicating, keep it real. You know, social media is a tool and not the only tool. You know,
right.
Not the answer. I guess, and you know, man, I could go on and you know, talk about. Well, I'm certainly not an expert at social media, but you know, there's some 10 commandments we can follow dealing with the media. And like I said, the media has changed so much, but you know, I don't know if you have time for that, but
Go ahead. Go ahead. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, working with the media in a crisis, I mean, you know, it's like, especially during the pandemic, you know, we did a lot of stuff virtually. And so people kind of got used to that, and you're not used to, you know, I would tell you, pick up the phone. You know, it's like, you know, I've had reporters write complete stories, even print reporters write complete stories just off of a couple of tweets that I wrote. So I would prefer that they get it right, but you know, I would prefer that they would call me. But you know, I guess if you're part of an interview or dealing with the media specifically, you know, don't overshare. These are my 10 commandments. Okay. So don't overshare or volunteer unneeded information. Don't answer a completely different question than the one that was asked. Never speculate. Don't lie, of course. Don't talk smack about close affiliations. Avoid gossip. Don't be confrontational. HIPAA, don't discuss patient information. Never discuss patient information. You can, you know, provide some information, but don't discuss patient information. I guess, you know, I come from the DC area, so, you know, don't be partisan. And that means, you know, try
Politics.
to
Oh yeah.
see both sides, and never assume that your charm or humor is working. So not everybody, I'm kind of a, I'd like to be funny, but you don't know how many times I've said, I like to think I'm a prolific tweeter, but a lot of times I'll say, oh, this will be cute, and I'll type something up and I'm like, so you have to be careful because not every, you can't see voice inflection and facial expression sometimes when you're using the social media. So, that's just a couple of thoughts, walking out the door here, you're dealing with the media or community, a couple of things to remember.
I appreciate that, Pete. Thank you. So how can people best reach out to you if they want to talk to you or learn more about what you do or connect?
Well, no matter where you live, if you need a fire truck or ambulance, call 911. Otherwise, you can, I'm pretty available. I love everybody to kind of take a look at my Twitter page at MCFRS PIO. MCFRS is Montgomery County Fire Rescue Service, but MCFRS PIO. Give me a follow if you want.
Sure.
You can always reach me there, direct message or whatever. I guess, call me. I have an opportunity to network with a lot of people and, a lot of people in the classes and people I've met. Certainly, I tell them they can always call me if they have a question, and people have. But also, I've called a lot of people with situations, trying to bounce it off, especially last couple of years, when we haven't had that personal contact.
Right.
So certainly, do you want give out my cell phone number here or?
Send it to me and I'll put it out in the show notes. This way it's just not out there in audio because I don't want you to get bombarded.
Yeah, that's fine. But also, of course, they can reach out to me in my email, my Gmail account, which is PIO, PETEP. So PIOPP @gmail.com.
And I'll add all that into the show notes along with Pete's cell phone when he sends it to me. But Pete, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure. I probably will get you on later on in a show later on in the year because I want to explore those 10 commandments a little bit more. And I'd like to dig into some more of your knowledge and background. So you're going to be a returning guest. So just so you know.
Yeah. Then we can repeat.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's good. I look forward to that. Thanks for this platform, and I love talking to people. I prefer to be in person, but this is great. But thanks for putting this out there, and I look forward to hearing from people, and follow me on Twitter, see what's going on here in Montgomery County, Maryland.
And that was Pete Piringer from Montgomery County Fire and Rescue. Thanks for coming on the show, Pete.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.